I'm Virus.
I'm Will.
And I'm David, and we are Device.
You know, I don't care if you like us, you don't like us, but you goddamn better bet you will motherfucking respect us while we are up here.
Basically, it was a fortunate accident of sorts. A colleague of mine, old friend by the name of Gino Leonardo, formerly of the band Filter, reached out to me at the tail end of the Disturbed touring cycle for the Asylum record. He was doing a number of tracks for the Underworld Awakening soundtrack. And he had already done one with Lacey from Flyleaf and one with Pete from Chevelle, and he had one in mind for me as well. I told him to send it to me. I listened to it, loved it, obsessed over it an entire night, came up with an amazing song out of it, called him the next day, said we have to put this down. Flew out to Chicago the next week, tracked it, recorded it, mixed it, mastered it, sent it to Lakeshore. They loved it. They wanted to use it as the lead track in their soundtrack. But there was a conflict of interest because Disturbed was working a track from our B-Sides compilation called The Lost Children, a track called Hell at Radio. The track that Gino and I had written together was called Hunted. And so we didn't want those two tracks to be fighting one another at radio for momentum. So we decided to hold on to Hunted. Hunted grew on us over the course of about a month's time of us listening to it. We ended up having follow-up conversations in which I said to him, listen, it's obvious that you and I have some writing chemistry together. Why don't we try to write some more, see what happens? Maybe we can sell the songs, find other vehicles for them, whatever the case may be. Still not with the intention of necessarily forming another project. And then in March of 2012, Gino came to my home in Austin, Texas for the first of two-week writing sessions. And those sessions produced the material that became the Device record. Now, it was never in the cards for Gino to be a part of the live touring entity. He's very entrenched in the film, soundtrack, and scoring world. He just finished doing a bunch of work for the I, Frankenstein movie, which is coming out. And so we needed to find other components to fulfill the rest of the equation. And Will had originally heard half of Hunted when Gino was working on it in terms of getting the mix done with Ben Gross. He was also working on something in the studio with Ben Gross as well. Heard the track, loved the track, wanted to become a part of something if it ended up turning into anything. About 6 months down the line was when we had finished writing further during that month of March, and where I was considering looking towards finding other artists to help bring this to life. I reached out to Will on Facebook. Will was currently, at the time, in Beirut, Lebanon, on tour with Evanescence. He got back to me right away, very excited and eager to get involved. He actually made the suggestion of contacting Virus. Virus and I had just bumped into each other about 2 years prior at Navy Pier in Chicago, where both of our families just kind of hanging out. So it was ironic that he mentioned it. I didn't need either one of these two guys to go ahead and audition. I know how good they were and are, and I didn't need them to prove anything as far as their level of proficiency or artistry or playing ability. So they came over to my home in Austin, Texas shortly thereafter, just for us to hang out for a little bit and feel how the energy was between us. Felt good, felt positive, and we moved forward. I think that all three of us have grown in the process of working together on this project and being on the road. We learn from each other, I think, on a daily basis. And even being on a tour like this with so many other great musicians and artists, it sharpens you, there's no question.
I think it's like this. It's like, in the jungle, hyenas hang out with hyenas, right? And lions hang out with lions. And I'm borrowing this from Zakk Wylde. But, you don't see lions hanging out with hyenas. The lions hang out with the lions. And we're lions.
Yes.
And it's funny, people ask me about that all the time. It's like, well, how do you feel like, being in a band with a girl? And I'm like, well, I don't really look at it that way. When we're on stage, when we're writing, when we're doing things, she's just one of us, and we're just a family. And to me, it all comes down to work ethic. And anybody can be good at anything if they put the time in, and they put the blood, the sweat, the tears, and all that stuff. And she's done it. Lizzie Hale definitely has paid her dues, And going back to people like Joan Jett or Lita Ford, which, the Close My Eyes cover is a Lita Ford Ozzy song. Those girls cut their teeth, man. They can stand up to any dude out there,
It is, without a doubt, a male-dominated genre. I don't think that there's any specific reason for that other than the fact, and it's pretty much impossible to escape, that this is testosterone-fueled type of music. But, I always thought, what more appropriate to get your blood pumping than to have a sexy girl with a powerful voice actually killing it on the mic. I have no problem with that whatsoever. In fact, in MMA, I was skeptical initially about the female matches, and the ones that I've seen in the past couple pay-per-views that I've watched have just been, really bombastic and entertaining for me. Really getting into it. Rousey and some of the other ones are powerful, and they're no joke. So, look, all of us have to overcome stereotypes of this sort. They are certainly doing it. The women in the genre are certainly doing it, and they're making a very clear and divisive statement about it. The wisdom of combining the multiple disciplines to be able to handle different scenarios of attack and defense, and particularly the close contact types of disciplines, which right now have become so instrumental and so much a primary facet of the MMA game. Guys who have their base in wrestling, guys who have their base in BJJ, guys who have their base in Krav Maga or anything else related to that are going to have an advantage on just about everybody else who may be used to distance fighting, or a discipline like Taekwondo or Karate or things of that nature. You need to, these days, and truth be told, is in any situation, it always ends up on the ground. 90% of the time, unless you're an unbelievable Anderson Silva caliber level striker who can just knock a guy out when they're not looking, with one strike. And there are plenty of guys in the sport who have that ability. It always ends up coming to grappling. It always ends up coming down to the ground game and what can you do once you're there? Can you escape? Can you get back on your feet? Will you be submitted? I think that the Gracie family were very, very instrumental in showing everyone the superiority of arts like jiu-jitsu and the value of the strength of having that strong base, that strong sense of balance, and that ability to be able to attack and defend yourself from a situation of a defensive position from the ground. Maintaining your guard, being able to maintain control, being able to be in a position of power when you're already in a ground situation is instrumental to any fight. And I completely respect the blending of the disciplines, because you really do need all aspects that the different facets of martial arts, when mixed, can combine. I think that you have to be a well-rounded fighter to be a successful one. I thought he was a bit cocky. I think he was caught off guard. I think that WEIDMAN was brilliant. I think that he was, very, very divisive. I think that he was on point. I think that part of it is Anderson Silva tired of having to be Anderson Silva. Part of what my gut was telling me is that he was almost consciously looking for a way out. Because I'm a huge Anderson Silva fan, and I'm used to his shtick. I'm used to the type of games that he plays in the ring. I get it. I'm also a big, I'm a big fan of people who treat all of their opponents with a certain level of dignity, respect, and honor. And in a certain way, I felt that the way that he conducted himself during the match, and I don't mean this with any disrespect to Anderson on any level, because I completely respect his ability and what he's done for the sport, and I completely recognize the fact, the irrefutable fact, that he is pound for pound probably the best fighter on the face of this planet. But the whole toying with someone and baiting them, I know that's part of his whole strategy. When you're as good as he is, I almost feel like you don't need to always go there. I know it's a matter of getting your opponent's guard down and trying to make them make a mistake so that you can counter. I get it. Yeah, but I think in this rematch, which obviously he's now agreed to, even though he originally said that it was going to be his retirement. I think that it's going to be important for him, if he really has decided and has committed to staying a powerful facet and a continuing facet of the sport and a leader in the sport, to be able to do it honorably and to be able to do it divisively and with an exclamation point at the end of it. And I'm hoping that's what happens. I do have a wrestling base. I was captain of the wrestling team in high school, so that's where my balance comes from. I have belts in Taekwondo, Hapkido, and I have studied some Krav Maga as well. I would love to try and expand into a little bit more of pure Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu technique, even though Krav Maga does incorporate different aspects of grappling and Jiu-Jitsu-like techniques into its discipline. I've been a scrapper my whole life, brother. You know, I've never competed, but you know, I've got, I don't know how many broken bones. My nose is broken 3 times. This thumb joint broken. This ankle, as you can hear, was broken. 3 ribs on this side, 2 ribs on this side. This wrist, all from fights. And 90% of those fights were for defending my heritage and my family and where I come from. And now it's a matter of trying to avoid lawsuits. So I can't really be as quick to defend myself as I used to be. But I've never shied away from it. And it's never something that I enjoy doing, but something that I've been forced to do on more than an occasion. I know Will's a scrapper too. He's not necessarily somebody who's trained in a specific art, but sometimes when you can, yeah. Well, you can be. It's been my experience that, and I'm sure it's the experience of many seasoned MMA fighters as well, that it's one thing to have gym proficiency, and it's another thing to have real-world proficiency. And until you're actually in a combat environment, and until you're actually in a ring with somebody and you're not sparring anymore, until it's a real-world situation, if you're on the street or if, you know, whether you're in the octagon or on the street, that takes things to a whole nother level. It takes your game to a whole nother level. It's not just a matter of knowing what to do. It's a matter of not having to think about it when you do it. So there's a lot more to it that comes with actually engaging in combat on a real level that sometimes you don't get from gym experience. Frankie Edgar, man. I think he's amazing. Henderson, Ben Henderson. I think they're both great. I'm a fan of so many of the guys. It's hard to pick. I love GSP. You know, he may not be the most bombastic fighter, but he gets it done. In my opinion, he's like the Michael Jordan of the sport. You know, does everything with just incredibly perfect technique, and his cardio for days is just ridiculous. Cain Velasquez, huge fan of him, and JDS as well. I'm looking forward to that rematch. I think that, you know, Cain really kind of handed his ass to him the last time. It almost looked like Dos Santos wasn't prepared enough for it. I was a big Brock Lesnar fan before he actually retired from the sport. I know that he's had complications that won't allow him to return. There's so many of the guys that I respect and admire. Machida, you know, Lyoto Machida, his incorporation of striking, his ability to incorporate the different disciplines into his long-standing regimen of karate, and his discipline that he's owned for most of his life, to be able to take in different aspects of the art and truly become a mixed martial artist. Shogun, all these guys. I'm fans of different aspects of the game, and I continue to try to learn as the art continues to develop. I was hoping before he lost the fight, and I was hoping that either Jones or Silva, either one of them would either agree to come up or come down, and that they'd face one another. I know that It was offered to Jones in the past, and he passed on it, and I don't blame him, because if I were him, I'd probably pass on it too. I'm very, very impressed with how quickly Jones has developed. I think that he has yet to meet someone that truly, truly tests his ability. The last match was with whom? Who did he fight last? It was with Sonnen. And you know something? If there was anybody that was going to test him, it would be Chael, because, I mean, in my opinion, he's the only guy that, you know, except for Weidman, that really gave Silva a run for his money. I think that he talks a little too much shit, and that kind of makes him, but that's part of his character, and that's part of his game, and that's part of getting under his opponent's skin. And sometimes when you let anger cloud your judgment, instead of trying to deal with technique and precision and waiting for timing, and you force things, that's when mistakes occur. And so I get it, and that's what he's trying to do. But you know, I think that yeah, the future, you know, the Rousey fight, okay, yeah, I'll watch it. Like I said, I'm still entertained, but I'm not as engaged by it as I am with the male fights. They seem to be still, you know, guys just hit harder, man. It is what it is. I mean, say what you want about it. I don't mean to come off sexist or whatever, but and I still enjoy, you know, the female fights, and like I said, they're no joke. But give me light heavyweights, give me heavyweights, give me even the featherweights and lightweights when they're, you know, speedy as hell, and they're making stuff happen every other minute, and they got cardio for days, and last all 5 rounds without batting an eyelash. I love that. You know, so I look forward to, you know, cards that are diverse. I look forward to martial artists that come into the scene that really incorporate different aspects of the discipline and can own people in different varieties of their respective disciplines. So I'm a fan of the sport in general, and I'm always looking forward to whatever the next card might be.